Welcome into Celtics Late Night. My name is Ben Vallis. Thank you for joining us. Hope you're doing well as the Celtics avoid the pitfalls of terrible franchises such as the Los Angeles Lakers by winning Game 4, 116-99, avoiding a sweep and gifting us at least one more game and one more Celtics late night show in the season. Alongside me, all smiles here, it's Jake Eisenberg. Jake, how you doing, man? Welcome back.
Let's go!
Yes!
It's party time!
Finally, a win!
We did it!
The curse is broken.
The late night curse is broken. The boys gave us a vintage W. The fellas got up. Welcome to everybody. Finally, the whole point of this show is that we're the fun time. Late night, where you should be going to bed.
The kick on.
You're gonna have one more show. You're gonna have one more drink, and keep it rolling.
Yeah. Now, look, we've got so much to get to. And obviously, the vibes are immaculate for the first time in this show's brief history. But a quick introduction, given this is only the fourth ever installment of Celtics Late Night. We are from the First to the Floor Celtics podcast, which is part of the CLNS network. We've been doing the pod for about 5 years. You can find it on all podcast platforms and on our YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this show and you want more similar content, make sure you find us there at First to the Floor, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc., and subscribe. Jake, the Celtics, they win. They win for the first time in what feels like forever, 116-99. Just 2 turnovers in the second half. So no teams have come back from an 0-3 deficit. Here's a statistic for you.
Yes.
13 teams have come back from a 3-1 deficit, which is where we find ourselves now. It's not impossible. There's a precedent. Jake, just your general takeaways from this game.
Man, we were getting a repeat of the first 3 games, it felt like, in the first half and the first quarter. But man, they steadied the ship. Like, you talk about the willingness to roll over, the mental toughness, all the bullcrap we heard over the past 48 hours and today, for these guys to turn up, be down, for it to look very, very similar to games 1, 2, and specifically similar to game 3. Heat were hot coming out the gates again in the first quarter. Celtics were struggling, turning the ball over. To come out down 9, second half, rally the troops, lock down on defense, knock down some shots, get out and run. Vintage elimination game from our guy, Jason Tatum. Look, who knows what's going to happen, but we're going to enjoy it tonight.
Yeah, who knows what's going to happen? Like, it could all... I won't say it. Who knows what's going to happen? Let's just leave it at that. It was a tale of 2 halves. Going into halftime, down 6. There was a nice response, and part of the story of this game was the Celtics responding to the runs of the Heat, whereas like previously in this series, it felt like our threshold for Heat runs, for Heat punches, was like 1 to 2 tops, and then we would just fall over and die. In this game, we just kept punching back. It was awesome. The resilience was there, finally. But it was a tale of 2 halves, like I said, and in the third quarter onwards, it felt like the Celtics kind of like, I don't know, like figured something out, offensively and defensively. Do you think that's the case in this one, Jake?
They definitely felt like they figured out, I mean, look, there's the shooting numbers, man. Like, you don't want to boil all of this down to orange ball goes in for the green team versus orange ball going in for the red team. But, like, they could not hit a shot for the first couple games, especially game 2. Like, that game 2 game, they should have been up by like 25, but they were like at 27% for the game. And today, finally, the Heat, who were like one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the league for the regular season, finally did not hit every single shot. Caleb Martin doesn't look like bloody Scottie Pippen, and Gabe Vincent doesn't look like the second coming of Isaiah Thomas from the Pistons. And the Celtics have a chance to get back in here. Shout out Joe in the chat, an OG First to the Floor co-host, checking in from Auckland. the shot making is always going to be part of it, but like the ability to knock them down, Al Horford to step up finally and hit some of these shots, like. And again, this was not a perfect game when you get into like the individual performances, but like seeing Al come out aggressively, knocking down shots, felt like just super important, super significant. And the reason why this team was so good all year was like him being this elite offensive weapon, this nuclear weapon that teams can't handle because teams don't have a center that's willing to take 7 or 8 threes and knock them down at a 45% rate.
Yeah. At a macro level, it was just the vibes and the energy that the Celtics were bringing, and there's so much at a micro level, like Al Horford hitting his threes and Derek White actually driving to the rim aggressively and finishing and drawing contact and like shooting threes without hesitation. A lot of that went into just like at again the macro level, like just the energy that the Celtics brought in this one. Defensively, like just to break it down to both ends of the court, the Celtics like they were getting killed by the Bam and anyone pick and roll in this one, especially sort of in the second quarter. Everyone got in foul trouble. Grant had 2, Al had 2, I think Derek had 2 as
Jalen
well.
as well.
Yeah, it was tough, and Bam Adebayo like knew that and attacked everyone and was getting what he wanted. Hence the Heat being up 6 at halftime, despite like pretty decent like shooting percentages from the Celtics there. Then in the second half, and I suppose late in the second quarter as well, we started sending 2 to the ball. And what that looked like as far as defending the Heat was 2 defenders at the rim to meet Bam or to meet Jimmy, stop them from getting up and getting easy looks, and then completely contesting and stopping the dump off pass as well. We turned the Heat over 15 times in this game, and so many of them, if you rewatch some of the footage, was at the rim. Just like, okay, there's no lane for you to get to the hoop, Bam or Jimmy or whoever. You got to dump it off, and we're right there to deny that pass as well. And that just got us out in transition. It got things humming for the Celtics. It was really good to see. The Heat, they shot 25% from 3, which I think factors into it as well. Shooting luck has been like I guess a popular topic post game so far this series. Do you think it just comes down to shooting luck for both teams, or was it the Celtics defense that actually prevented the Heat from hitting at a regular clip? Or do you not know? Which I think is also a completely fine answer as well.
We're gonna have to see the shot quality charts because that's been the hot topic of the series. And a lot of what the talk has been like the Celtics taking these quick threes versus working the ball around. But today they hit like, get a little bit of an advantage. Jason kicks to Al, knocks down a quick 3. A little bit of an advantage, kicks to Derek, hits a quick 3. Yes, there were plenty of threes that they knocked down that came from working the ball around. But the Heat are just collapsing on the paint, and they were like, you have to make some of these tough, quick threes. Otherwise, we're not giving you anything to the paint. And they were just missing all of them. And and look, Joe's favorite term, earned threes go in. Absolutely no question. The problem is the Heat have been trying to turn the Celtics into a driving team, funneling Jason and Jalen into Bam, and they're so good at getting their hands in and causing these turnovers. And then Jason and Jalen, or Jason's finding, making good reads and getting balls to shooters, and they've been missing. And then that just leads to clogging the lane. That leads to Jason trying to force it, and that leads to turnovers. Yes, you want to see them earning threes, and you're able to get to those earned threes more when we're locking down on defense. And when this game started, did not feel like we were going to be locking down on defense. Getting cooked by Bam one-on-one, couldn't keep anyone out of the paint. They were knocking down threes. But the third quarter, we finally saw like some of the runs that we saw in this year. Like when the Celtics have been at their best and just like taking the souls of their other team is when they're getting stops, and then all of a sudden it's just like bang, 3, stop, bang, another 3, bang. It's just like over and over this wave of stops and athleticism and pace and earned threes. The problem is like it's all connected. You need the tough. You haven't earned that 3 to open up the driving lane to give you the ability to earn a 3. Like it's all connected. We started to see something that I've been clamoring for Tatum in the post. Tatum in the post. We saw it once in the first half, and the Heat defense just freaked out. They sent like 2 or 3 guys. Jason kicked it, swung it to the wing. It may have been a Derek 3, which he missed. But I was like, this is easy offense. This is an easy way to find earned threes, is because for whatever reason, no one except for the Heat are clearly aware of it, because as soon as Tatum gets it in the post, they're reacting. They know that he can get to his mid-range. They know that he can spin baseline, get to the rim. And then once they do send that help, the passes become really easy. In the second half, one of my favorite plays of the game, Tatum in the post, he's getting deep, and then the Heat shade over kind of one at the nail and one at the top of the key. Tatum stays poised. Marcus cuts like right under the rim, dump off, wrap around pass like around the stanchion. It felt like easy layup to kind of push the lead back out. It's a safe place to be, is Tatum in the post and Jalen in the post as well. If they're going to stick Gabe Vincent on you, instead of trying to drive at him from the top, we saw a little bit of Jalen get to that like bang, bang, and then step and fade away. I don't mind Jalen taking these mid-range long twos, because that means he's not turning the ball over and he's getting a clean look over a defender in Vincent, and a shot that we've seen him make hundreds of times this season. Let's keep it simple. Get the big fellas in the post. Let's go.
Yeah, and that smart Tatum to Smart pass / layup that you're talking about, that was actually a really difficult finish, like low key for Smart. If you catch it like 2 feet under the basket, you're not looking at the basket, to go straight up and finish reverse the way he did is just like low key difficult finish. But yeah, absolutely, where we were getting Jason Tatum the ball seemed to be the key offensive adjustment, and we pretty much only seemed to see it in the second half. Like if the Heat send 2 at the ball when Tatum is operating out of the pick and roll, and there's already another Celtic there with Tatum in that action, which is how pick and rolls work, then it's 2-on-2 defensively and offensively. If they send 2 or 3 at the ball when Tatum is ISOing in the post, you're opening up so many more passing opportunities, because spacing wise, you're not crowded with the guy setting the pick who's there. You've got way more spread. You've got way more spaced out offense, way more options to the guys like, for Tatum to kick it to. So we saw that pretty well instantly as soon as we started to go with Tatum in the post there, which was incredible. And as well, we saw someone call it out in the comments before, just the way the Celtics attack the zone. Tatum like getting to the nail, catching the ball, turnaround fade, and the best way of illustrating that, I guess, is the fourth quarter, where I think the Heat cut it to 5 there. They were throwing their junk defenses at us, different types of zones. Tatum checks in, and it was just like bucket, bucket, bucket. And I think the first one was Jason Tatum catching the ball at the nail, turning, fading, scoring. And he's just like one of maybe 2 maximum players, I think Smart being the other one, who can actually, I'm just looking at your beer commentary here in the chat here, Jake, who can actually like execute out of those nail catches in attacking zone defenses. So yeah, early fourth quarter, Tatum checking in and attacking the zone was like the most glaring example of that.
On that, because I feel like that was obviously didn't end up mattering, but Tatum played the entire third quarter and then came out for like 2 minutes in the fourth quarter, and the Heat went to that zone and it was a disaster, like absolute disaster. It was like Brogdon and I don't know how we're still doing Brogdon and Jalen out there, especially against a team like the Heat, where they're throwing these zones at you, and like you have to be able to make quick decisions against the Heat. You just have to. As soon as you hesitate, they chop your head off. Mm-hmm. And when they went to that zone, it was really bad. And it was like, Tatum needs to play this. I thought it was the most obvious thing. It's like Tatum has to play this whole game. And the lead got back down to 5, I think. And then Tatum came back in. As you said, it was bang, mid-range splash, and then it was off. Then the lead was off, and we were off to the races again. But I was like, is this going to be the final nail in the coffin of like everything? Joe, I couldn't fathom Tatum not being in, because yesterday you watched Lakers down 3-0. LeBron plays all 48 minutes. Jokic plays 45 minutes. It's like, if Tatum's not going to be playing 45 minutes plus now, then like, I don't know what we're doing. Because he went to the bench, and both ends it fell to pieces. I'm just like, he has to play 45 minutes at this point.
especially with LeBron playing essentially the whole game yesterday at 38 and not getting his team over the hill. There's some sweetness in like us getting over the hill with Jason Tatum at 19 years old and not playing the full game, and yet we're still able to do it there. Shouts to the Lakers. Yeah, definitely the emphasis offensively, getting Tatum the ball in different spots. It's a shame that we had to wait till like literally halfway through game 4 when we're on the total brink, like the biggest version of being on the brink of elimination. We have to wait till we get to that point before we start to show Jason Tatum different looks. And like, lo and behold, it works amazingly. Just a few notes here. So the Heat, their role players, Duncan Robinson, 0 of 4 from 3. Gabe Vincent, 1 of 4 from 3. Strus, 1 of 5 from 3. Caleb Martin finally starts to look human, just 2 of 5 from 3. And his 2 makes came quite early. And they were inhumane makes. Like, they were insane. And early in the game, you're like, okay, like, this is the same formula. The Heat are just hitting everything, and the Celtics, they came out with intent. They do look better on both ends, but like, our series can just come down to if your role players are hitting absolutely everything, then it's over. And that's kind of been the case thus far. And yes, like, credit the Heat and what they've done, discredit the Celtics defense and offense as far as them being a no-show so far in the series. It was so good to see the Celtics' best defensive effort coincide with the Heat's worst offensive shooting efficiency. Like, you have to, I know we talk about luck and shot quality and stuff like that, but you have to believe based on that there is some correlation between us bringing our A game defensively and the Heat finally shitting the bed offensively.
Yeah, definitely. And there were even a couple early, especially in the first quarter. And I like honestly respect the Celtics for sticking with it, because it could have been really easy just to be like, this is not our series. If Gabe Vincent's going to be doing this, if Caleb Martin's going to be doing this, like, what chance do we really have if they're going to be playing? Like how are the Heat going to have all these guys on their roster when they're going to have to offer a supermax to Caleb Martin, supermax to, Gabe Vincent, they've got these guys playing at like this absurd level. It would have been really easy for the Celtics to look and be like, whatever's happening with these role players on the Heat right now, there's just nothing we can do about it. They stuck with it, and then they cranked it up. They did, no question, they cranked up the defense. They were flying around. I do think the defense, especially in game 2, is really good. And what makes this kind of tough is like, how do we not steal, game 1 or game 2 to make this a tied series right now, which obviously hurts. But the fact that we were close in those other games where the Heat were scorching hot, and the Celtics almost won game 2 shooting below 30%, while the Heat were still like firing on all cylinders. So like, they can win a game where they don't win the shooting percentage battle. So that does give you confidence going forward to steal the next one, but keeping these guys off balance, not letting them get comfortable, that has to be like from the jump next game.
Yeah, play like elite NBA defense against guys who came out of the G League, and you start to make them look more like G League guys again. And that's not to discredit the Heat and their success and how they've gotten as far as they have with their player development and whatnot. But like, if you just play these guys essentially like they're all Kevin Durant, like they're all LeBron James, then you can start to mitigate their impact that they're otherwise having, because maybe you're disrespecting them somewhat. So it was so good to finally see that in this game. Before we move on, like, I guess there's still a lot more to get to about the game, and we're so much more excited to talk about the game itself because we actually won it. Joe Mazzulla, timely timeouts. He had one in the fourth quarter where Jaylen Brown was about to turn the ball over. And Joe Mazzulla's like, you can't turn the ball over if I just call a freaking timeout before you lose the ball.
Very good.
Amazing. Genius
really,
approach.
Really good, Joe. I thought outside of the Tatum minutes to start the fourth quarter, I thought that Joe was great. Mm-hmm. He's taking, doing the quick timeout thing, and that one, especially when the run was, teetering a little bit. And then late when every Celtics fan in the world was like, we have a 17-point lead with 5 minutes to go. And I was like, this would be the coup de grace of Celtics collapses if the Celtics could blow a 17-point lead in like 4 minutes and 48 seconds. But no, he called a timeout. Tatum had like walked the ball up a couple times. And then literally out of that timeout, they started running and moving again and going quick. And it's like, Where was this?
It's
Where
not too
was
late.
this?
It's not too
It's
late.
not too late. Like
Just
not even throughout this series, but like at times throughout these playoffs, like, try and get these dudes back on track when you can see them walking the ball up. They even had to bleep out an F-bomb from Joey Maz in one of the inside, like the mic'd up segments. And I was like, yes, Joe, let's go.
Yep.
Like it was people should not tell the Celtics the score. Like they should, no one's allowed to look at the scoreboard. That's like a team wide rule. Whether you're down or you're up, just play fast and play defense. And you just have to guess how many points you're up by, and they won't walk the ball up.
Yeah. So a few other points here. Offensively, the Celtics obviously hit 40% of their threes. I think the reason we've left it so long to mention that stat is because everything we've already talked about feeds into that, which is playing the right way, offensively, paint touches, drives, kickouts, all the stuff we already know. And then defensively, being, and this is a phrase we've used since the inception of this podcast, being handsy in the paint, which the Heat are so good at doing. That's how they turn the Jays over so frequently. It's just getting their hands down towards the ball during drives. And the Celtics did such a good job of being that disruptive in this game. Obviously, it has the inverse effect offensively. So good to finally see that. Points off turnovers, like I said, we turned them over 15 times. We had 18 fast break points in this game. Transition, we were really effective in the second half. Unfortunately, cleaning the glass, they haven't posted their stats for this game. Normally, they have by this point, so I don't have the precise transition stats, but particularly in the second half, we were really good. Thanks, Colin, for your comment. Handsy. But Jaylen Brown, who had a pretty terrible game, and we will get to individual performances in a little bit, managed to be successful in transition when the rest of the team played well. They forced turnovers, and we got out in transition. Suddenly, lo and behold, Jaylen Brown has this lane to be impactful in the game and getting out there and actually hitting contested layups in transition and really putting the game away rather late in the fourth. There's still a lot to get to, Jake. Anything else as far as what you saw differently from the season this one before we move on?
It's all about stops, because the Heat defense is just so good about bringing out our weaknesses. Like, our best initiator is Jason Tatum. For better or worse, that is just the fact. Like, Marcus is probably the quote-unquote best playmaker, but it's Jason Tatum is the best initiator because of his insane scoring gravity and his really high-level playmaking and ability to pass still. But he's 6'9", 6'10". His handles the level of skill that he has for someone of that size is 99.99 percentile ever NBA players. But he can turn the ball over and guys can get their hands in there. And so when you get stops and you get out and run, even if it's not just full transition, breakaway layup stuff, in transition you push, you just have these little advantages that allow Tatum to get a little extra crack of space, which makes the pass to the corner a little bit easier, which makes that closeout just a tiny bit extra late, which gives Derek White a little bit more confidence to drive the closeout. And that's just all they need, is just that split second, that little bit extra space, and the offense was back to what made them the best net rating in the NBA. So it's all about stops, and we know this. We've known this, and all the talk about the Celtics defensive identity slipping. I thought Al Horford had some really good comments today when he had one-on-one interview with Abby Chin, and she was asking him about how that they've lost their defensive identity, and he pushed back and he was like, "I don't think we've fully lost it. I thought we played really good. We shut down Philadelphia at times. We played really good defense in game 2. I think they kind of got us in game 1 at times, and obviously definitely got us last game. But I don't think that it's true that we fully lost our defensive identity, which is objectively true. They were the second best defense in the NBA this year. Just when you compare them to the historic defense of last year, and where some of the offensive focus went, they weren't able to crank it all the way back up. It's in there. It's in there. It's in there. And maybe that talk led to, people doubting that defense. I'm sure it was a focus. they're going to go back and watch the film. It's like once they get stops, they can get out and run off rebounds. It completely changes the defense, and that's the game.
I guess as I'm starting to like talk myself into the Celtics coming back somehow, does it like just like humor me or not, or like feel free to shut me down and put me in my place? Does it kind of feel like the Heat have like if the Celtics played this way every night and they're hitting all their threes, but they're earned threes, as our New Zealand correspondent Joe pointed out earlier. Like, do the Heat have a way that they can like play in response to this? Because this was why the Celtics were favored going into this series. Is like, yes, there's Butler, there's Bam, and then like if role players, aren't doing like if Caleb Martin isn't like Michael Jordan or Ray Allen from three, then like there's actually kind of little they can do once you nullify Jimmy and Bam. And the Celtics just did such a good job like putting two on the ball in this game, whether it was Jimmy or Bam, and then the rotations, like getting out, closing out on shooters that were so crisp. There was so much force behind that. If the Celtics play that way, which is clearly hard, which is why we haven't seen them do that, like let alone all series, all season, is there anything that Heat can do in response to that?
I'm sure there is. This is why I'm not quite an NBA coach yet, though. But I'm sure there's going to be some kind of SPO adjustment. They're going to come up with something to deal with the Celtics defense that they saw in the third quarter. But it comes down to keeping your guy in front of you, guarding your yard, stepping up and having that ability to just be like, I'm not getting beat one-on-one. Because once you get beat one-on-one, the Heat are so crisp with their ball movement and they have good enough shooters where they can make you pay. But that being said, like the Heat shot 30% from three in the Knicks series. Mm-hmm. They were ice cold. It's absurd that like their hot shooting has been in 5 games against the Bucks and in 3 games against the Celtics. It's like, and then in the 6 games against the Knicks, it just completely slumped. And the fact that it's rocketed straight back up against the Celtics is frustrating. But like Max Strus was a 33% three-point shooter in the regular season. Jimmy Butler was an 11% three-point shooter in the Knicks series. Like Duncan Robinson fell out of the rotation for a reason. Kevin Love got bought out for a reason. There is absolutely a way for you to talk yourself into this, Ben. Like there's
Don't tell me that. I don't need to know that. I don't know if that's healthy, Jake. Is that a healthy way to walk around for the next 2 days? Being like Celtics in 7?
No.
We're going to do it anyway though, right?
Terribly not. No, God, no. As soon as this game ended, straight jumped in the ocean, screaming primally, just with joy, finally that they've done this.
Yeah.
And in the back of my mind, I know that we're, probably going to lose, but like I'm convinced that we're not now. So
it's literally unprecedented.
Yeah, but look, everything's unprecedented at some point. So
I will say, like, just win the next game. This is crazy oversimplifying it. Win the next game. Suddenly you're back in that. John Zanis was saying it on the
3-2, baby.
Before. You're back at 3-2. Like that's your wheelhouse, Jason Tatum.
3-2.
That's where you
3-2.
love to be. So, like a little bit, like it's so important. Again, like doesn't need to be said, obvious, but like just win the next game, and suddenly you're like fully back in the fold. So I'm excited in that sense, but I'm also like, I feel like I've matured as a Celtics fan, and like if they lose the next game, I won't be that disappointed because I won't have allowed my hopes to get too high.
Let me ask you this. If they win the next game, but then lose game 6 in Miami, is that going to feel like a pretty sizable moral victory?
No. See, I think maybe. I don't know. I'll have to tell you how I feel when we get to that point. But I feel like this is what the Celtics do. They do this in the course of a game as well. They'll get you back to a point where they like to use the Dennis system, inspire hope, only to separate entirely at the very end. They do this with late game runs where they cut it to like 3 or 4 or whatever it may be. Like if they lose in the next game, it's like, okay, great, you avoided getting swept. We're better than the Lakers. That's awesome. And like in the whole comparison of like 17 championships each against the Lakers, we should be able to at least hold above them. Yeah, well, at least we didn't get swept in 2023, and therefore we are absolutely better than you. But yeah, if we win the next game and then lose in 6, I'll feel almost more disappointed because it's like, oh, you got me back in, you got me fully reinvested emotionally, and then you like dump me on my ass. How do you feel about that?
Yeah. Yeah, look, you're probably right. And this is exactly what this team does. You're right. Like literally in the first, was it the first quarter or the first half at some point? They went on a like 9-0 run or something like that. They were up, they like had a little run, and everybody in the world was like, I thought I was out. And then they pull me back in.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. They do it all the time.
It doesn't take much. We're all, clearly in an unhealthy relationship, but like, whatever. I'm going back for more. Exactly. Like, and this is what it's all about, like being a fan, the lows, the highs, and if you can't enjoy the highs, then like, what's the point, right? Jason Tatum elimination game, another one.
Yeah.
Another one. So good.
We're gonna get to individual performances, because if you're sitting there thinking, wow, they haven't talked enough about how amazing Jason Tatum was in this game, or how bad Malcolm Brogdon was in this game, but that's still to come. A little bit later, we are going to get to what are the all-time Celtics and NBA fly on the wall moments, as in like what NBA like conspiracy moments. And this was instigated by Kevin O'Connor's tweet about like apparently the Celtics, I'm not going to say this verbatim, like getting sick of pretending to like each other and wishing that you could be a fly on the wall in that locker room. What are your favorite fly on the wall moments in NBA history? That's what we're going to get to a little bit later. But to stick with this game, and before we get to individual performances, the resilience of the Celtics, Jake, and this one needs to be called out. The many, many times that they responded to runs. There was a second quarter response where I think they went on a 16-0 run. The third quarter response, again, obviously coming out down 6. And there was a moment in the second quarter where like Jimmy blew a layup. He caught the rebound. He blew another even more point-blank layup. It ended up in Max Strus's hand, who was really, really well contested by, I think it was Tatum.
Blocked it.
Yeah, and then he like regathered the ball and then shot it, and I think the Heat went either back up 6 or up 9, and it was like these are just those like bone-crushing moments that we've not responded to all series. How can we possibly expect them to respond now? And they did, and they responded time and time again. We mentioned the fourth quarter, the Heat claw back to 5. Jason Tatum comes back in, it scores immediately. They responded to runs all game. The resilience was there. I don't know how to curb that into a question, Jake, like, because I feel like we know everything we can possibly know about each team at this point in the series. It's just worth calling out that like that's been part of the Celtics. We talk about Heat culture all the time, part of the Celtics culture in sort of like the Brad Stevens and up era, and to sort of see a glimmer of that in this game was really reassuring.
No, to not believe in these guys as like, I don't know, metal as competitors and as athletes, I think at this point is crazy to me. Like, yeah, they kind of let go of the rope in game 3, but like there was nothing they could do. It felt like in game 3, like they just could not on either end get it together. But that play that you're talking about, yeah, I'm watching it now. Kevin Love misses a straightaway 3. Marcus and Horford fumble a rebound. Jimmy gets it, misses, taps to Bam. Kevin Love swings to Max Strus. Tatum blocks it. Strus gets it back. Heat go up 9 when he hits that. And that's like 2 minutes into the third quarter. From that moment, 18-0 run. Celtics up 9.
Yeah.
Like,
amazing. What a response.
To flip it like that is so impressive. To be everyone watching at home, all of you were like, great. That's the season. Like, if that's going in, if that's the way the ball's bouncing, what can we do? And then tighten the screws and ram it down their throat. 18-0 run.
Yeah. And we've got some folks in the chat like talking about, relishing in the highs and, I think the best instance of that is when like your hopes and dreams are crushed, or like even if we still have a lead, you just have that sense of like, oh, they're going to come back and get this. Like this is it. That was our last like flash of impact in this game, and then for the team to come back despite your worst nightmares and completely despite your completely crushed hopes at that point, for them to come back at that point again and again, that's like for me the highest of the highs, when in like a vacuum they exceed your expectations. So that was a lot of fun in this game. I just hope we see it in game 5.
Yeah.
Should we get to individual performances? Do you want to start with Jason Tatum? 33 points, 64% shooting, 7 assists, 11 rebounds, 5 turnovers, but like 3 of those were in the first 2 minutes of the game where he was driving and getting stripped. We talked about like the adjustments and getting Tatum different looks. His turnovers obviously dropped completely off from that point. 2 blocks, 25 points on 73% shooting in the second half alone. Say more, Jake. Like, where does this sort of like rank and stand in your point of view in terms of like the echelon of Jason Tatum playoff games?
I mean, as far as back against the wall elimination games go, this is probably ranked 3rd, I would say. Mm-hmm. It's game 7 against Philly. It's game 6 against Milwaukee. And today, like, he was doing it all. And I know like the shots weren't necessarily falling in the first half where, where did he go? He was 3 for 7 in the first half, but he had 8 rebounds, 2 assists. Yeah, and he had those 4 turnovers. But like, this guy does so much for this team. Like, doesn't need to be turned into anything more than that, at least at this moment. Like, he is this team's power forward, center, point guard, top scorer. Like, anything that you need him to do, he does his best at whatever the task is. Like, he's been leading this team in rebounds all year long, and I'm going to keep pounding that drum because I think it's like people talk like always. I feel like the national narrative around this guy can be like he's not competitive, he hasn't won it. Like, this guy leads this team in rebounding. Like, Bill Simmons like has a fetish. I love Josh Giddey as much as anyone as an Aussie. Like, love Josh Giddey. Bill Simmons like has been fetishizing the fact that Josh Giddey is leading his team in rebounding all year long. Tatum's been leading his team in rebounding all year long on like the second best defensive team in the league. And defensive rebounding is like one of the most important parts of defense. Like, Celtics fans should know that more than anyone.
He gets beastly, like loud rebounds as well. Like grabs it every time, goes up. He like feasts on the boards. You love to see it. And you sort of hope, hasn't always been the case, but it was in this one where like it sort of permeates through the rest of the team. And, the intensity in which Tatum grabs the rebound sort of continues on as the team pushes the ball up the court there. So Tatum, yeah, I think I'd rank it like 3 in terms of playoff captain's knocks, and just because yes, like there have been elimination games in the past, like I'm thinking like the bubble, game 7 against the Raptors.
Game 7 against the Raptors was huge. Tatum. Yeah,
but like it wasn't just an elimination game that he was staving off. It was like the pride, maintaining the pride for the Celtics and their fans, and like I personally feel like very let off the hook just getting this one game. Obviously, it will be disappointing if they lose the next game or the game after or the game after that. But just to not be swept, and we mentioned like the Lakers comparison there, like that just feels like such a win. So I think that's got to be top 3. But let us know in the comments, folks. And if you're listening later, let us know in an iTunes review, or what is it called these days? Apple Podcasts, preferably a 5-star review.
Definitely.
Let us know in your 5-star review what you think in terms of the rankings in the Tatum playoff game echelon there.
Definitely, please like, comment. If you're watching live right now, just like hit the like button because we really appreciate it.
I think we dipped down to like a 4.7 in Apple Podcasts, which is crazy because we bring our like Tatum top 3 games every pod, so to dip down to 4.7 is a pain. I'm sure like 10 people now.
That probably happened after game 5 of the Philly series. If I was if we go back and look at what day that one came in, that would be my guess. I have a spicy question for you here.
Please.
Who has had the better series so far? Jason Tatum or Jimmy Butler?
This game springs that. Yes, please. I had an answer for you, but please tell me.
I'll give you the numbers. Jimmy Butler, 39.1 minutes. 25.5 points, 7.3 rebounds, 5.8 assists, 2.8 steals. Very impressive. But 42% from the field, 22% from three, 90% from the field. Jason Tatum, 27.8, 10.3 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 4.3 turnovers. But on 50% shooting, 31% from three, 92% from the line. Tatum's numbers are like markedly better. I am convinced that if the rest of the Celtics team had turned up in game 1 and 2, that it would be 2-0. Like Tatum was the only dude that played above like at his like expected level, and Rob in game 2. Outside of that, like no one else turned up. And it was like he's been really, really good in 3 out of 4 games. Maybe towards the end of a couple of those games he struggled, but like someone's got to help.
I'm about to say some stuff that I don't want to say out loud, let alone think about. But it's Jimmy Butler. It's Jimmy Butler because he's up 3-1 in the series. And if you look at, and I'm not just echoing what the chat is saying here, like I genuinely feel this way. If you look at the way that his team has performed around him, and this is where I get to like saying stuff that I don't actually want to say.
No, it's fair.
I hate saying this. Heat culture, like that is kind of like 50% Jimmy Butler there in terms of how he. Thanks, Jim Smith. 1, 2, 3. Sleep well.
Sleep tight, Jimmy.
In terms of like how Jimmy Butler, that is, makes the rest of his team perform. I think you have to give Jimmy Butler a lot of credit there. So while Tatum statistically might have been more impressive, if you obviously factor in the lack of supplementary teammate performances, like yes, but like it's Jimmy Butler because his team's up fucking 3-1 in the series. Like
I can't believe you, man. I cannot believe you. But I'm just kidding.
You back me into a corner, Jake. Like it's that's the truth. Unfortunately, I don't like to say it. I don't like to think it, but that's the truth.
How about this then? You might be right. And look, the turnovers are probably the stat that swings the matchup, right? Tatum just can't have those turnovers down the stretch in games 1 and 2. Jimmy's been better, and there's definitely the Christopher Feely here, so that like the intangible stuff, which I think Tatum is underrated in that aspect. But Jimmy, his ability to sense certain moments, I feel like he even sensed it today, but he wasn't able to convert. He felt the game slipping away, and he tried to assert himself. He went on a little run. He ended up matching Tatum, I think, and not quite matching Tatum bucket for bucket in the third, but he tried to. There was a Tatum-Jimmy duel happening. Tatum just outlasted Jimmy in the fourth quarter. But I think that's part of Tatum's growth, is that really sensing those moments, able to impact the game like more surgically. Like Jimmy's just so surgical in moments throughout the game where he's able to get to exactly what he wants. He's able to get someone involved when they need to be involved. And Tatum's still getting there from that perspective. I think Jimmy's a totally fair answer. I think like the narrative even coming into today's game was like Tatum's just had a bad series, but it's just like completely not true. He was not great in game 3, but all other games he's been good. And honestly, like I was going to say, like if you just switch Caleb Martin and Malcolm Brogdon, like it could easily be 3-1 the other way. Like I'm not kidding.
But that's what I'm talking about. Like, what effect does one player have on the other? Like, what would Jimmy Butler be getting out of Malcolm Brogdon in this series? It's highly speculative, and some of it
is highly speculative.
A lot of it comes down to timing, right? Like Bobby Manning, I think, reported on the Garden Report after the game that like clearly Brogdon's like forearm injury is somewhat significant, and I'm sure that Caleb Martin feels like incredibly healthy and like in his prime right now. So there's those elements as well. But it would be interesting to see like what kind of smoke Jimmy Butler would be blowing up the arse of Malcolm Brogdon if you could reverse the roles. We do need to take a very quick break just to mention our sponsor. Jake, I was informed that we don't have to do the full read on the video version or the live version of the podcast, but we will just call out our sponsor, FanDuel, there, because right now new customers can get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. We love using FanDuel. They have great promotions every day. It's a safe and secure app. You get paid instantly, which if you're a gambling enthusiast like some of us might be, you would have come to have learned that a lot of gambling apps don't necessarily pay instantly, if at all. Jake, like looking forward to game 5. Have you got a multi? Have you got like something that you could present to the people betting wise?
I don't have a parlay quite ready yet, but honestly, what I would do, and I'm a coward. I can't lie. Sometimes I'm a coward. I've already placed my money line bet on the Miami Heat just as an emotional hedge. That's personally what I would be doing for the rest of the series. Is just like at this point, I need something to cling on to if the Celtics are going to lose. So you put like $100 on the Heat to win game 5, and you win $240. Like the odds are really good. And this is the Celtics are now favored heavily again.
Not a good sign. Not a good sign.
Finally today, the Heat were finally favored, and the Celtics blow them out. Which just goes to show like no one knows anything. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and like bet on the Heat, like just for an emotional hedge as well. Like you lose,
that's what I'm saying.
Celtics lose, then you win, and vice versa. Yeah. Individual performances. Let's move on here. Grant Williams. We've got to talk about Grant, MF and Williams. 14 points on 57% from the floor, 4 of 6 from 3. The defense, the block on Jimmy Butler, and then just like poise to not talk his shit in that moment. Yeah. You could tell he was like, it took all the restraint in the world not for him to like bark back at Jimmy Butler. Jaylen Brown had a post-game quote after the game saying just like verbatim, Grant comes in and adds to winning, which he absolutely did in this game. Thoughts on Grant Williams in this one, because it's so nice to see him back like fully in the rotation, Jake.
He was huge. The block on Jimmy Butler, man, what a cool story arc. Like this is like, even if you're an objective observer, you'd need the Celtics to win one more game, because now we've got like this Grant Jimmy back and forth. We've got highlights of mostly Jimmy cooking Grant, but now we've got the head to head. We got Grant talking smack. We got Grant blocking Jimmy. Colin playing Settlers of Catan right now in Grant's
an homage
honor.
to Grant Williams. Yeah, that's right.
I hope you're stockpiling sheep right now. That's usually my go-to resource when I'm playing Catan. Grant, solid, man. Look, we need like the Heat are playing Grant like he's PJ Tucker. Like go back and watch, and Grant is wide open. Wide open. They are not defending him like he's a 40% three-point shooter. Well, one thing we do know about Grant, he's like not scared to shoot. And it feels like since his benching, when he has gotten the chance to come in, he's been firing. And one of the biggest issues with Grant previous to him being banished to the netherworld, to the, what's the place in, you're not going to know the answer to this, the place in Yu-Gi-Oh! Where they get sent when, not going to chat. If you're a Yu-Gi-Oh guy, where's the place you can get sent when...
I'm used to saying like the Shadow Realm. Is that a thing?
Honestly, it might be the Shadow Realm. That's probably the word I'm looking for.
Okay.
Before Grant got sent to the Shadow Realm, he was pump faking and trying to do all this stuff. And then now, since then, anytime he's come back, he has been firing away. I've been like using that game, the first game in Atlanta where he came in and was 4 for 4 from 3. I was like, Shadow Realm, nailed it. How did he not get back in the rotation after going 4 for 4 from 3 in Atlanta after being cold for like 2 weeks? Like that's his job. And then you knew you were going to need him in the Philly series. Like he should have been in the rotation from then. He hasn't been scared to fire away. He's been confident in firing away. The Heat are going to play him this way. He has to be confident and he has to knock him down. And to go 4 from 6, huge, monstrous, love it. Give the man the max. No.
Wouldn't it just be classic Joe Mazzulla to be like, Grant Williams, your work here is done. We're back in the winning column, back on the bench, sir. Thank you for your service.
We're going back to game 1 strategy. We're putting Pritchard in.
Yeah. Al Horford, Derek White, Marcus Smart. I'll give you the choice, Jake.
Oh,
Which of those role players do you want to highlight next?
maybe the mistress.
Ooh,
It's been a little
finally,
while. It's been
mistressing
a little
again.
while. Yeah, look, look, I started making hotel bookings for me and the mistress to catch up after these games because he's kind of disappeared for the last 6 weeks. I've been ghosting him.
You had like a roadside motel perma booked in case
Yeah,
any action was on, and now you're like calling up the Marriott, like looking for last second
yeah,
reservations.
exactly. Yeah, there's usually a last second. I've got enough Marriott points at this point from how good Derek's regular season was, where they make me a priority. But finally, D White, and it was like obviously he knocked down shots. Like today, 3 for 7 from three, 5 for 10 from the field. But the play that epitomized Derek being back to me was he got an offensive rebound over Jimmy Butler, kind of like hit him with an elbow to like the neck, and then goes up for the and one. And I'm like, winning plays, Derek White. Like D White missed a lot of shots in last year's playoff run, but he made a lot of winning plays. That's what we want to see. Look, shots are going to come and go, but what I have always loved about D White and what we always love about Smart is that they make plays outside of the box score, whether it's an offensive rebound, loose balls, deflections, all that stuff. I felt like we recaptured some of that today with Derek, and that's the intangible winning play stuff. But you called it out earlier. Early in the game, he drove on Max Strus and got right to the rim for a little classic D White herky-jerky floater, which we haven't seen since, as you said, game 2 of the Atlanta series, it's felt like. There should be plenty of cracks for him to take advantage of, whether it's Gabe Vincent, Duncan Robinson, Max Strus, where, Tatum's creating these advantages. D White's got, if they're closing out hard, drive that thing. Get those little floaters up. Like, he was great. I thought his defense was really good. Yeah, D White, thank you, sir.
Yeah, so much of like what has made this team successful has been diminished in the postseason, and not just in this series. Like Derek White hasn't really showed up since like game 3 of the Hawks series. And so to start to see those pieces be built back up again, and for Derek White to, because like, yes, like the sort of for a while there, the last remaining piece was just Jason Tatum still being awesome. And that's just not enough if you've got no one else performing around him. And to start to see, despite Jalen's sort of streak of bad performances here, those other complementary pieces, and there's been a lot of talk about identity for this team. Those role player pieces start to be built back up around Tatum, and in this one, Derek White actually being himself again, and as well as like driving aggressively, 2 blocks, 2 steals. Like that's our all defense second team guard being who he is again. Actually hitting threes. That's incredible. The next role player that I'd probably call out, Al Horford, 12 points, 7 boards, 4 assists, 3 of 6 from 3. Like pretty confidently jacking them up under some duress early. Like he was one of the early 3-point getters in this game, and sort of like setting the tone for the offense, and like just the like how can you say, like just the confidence and like balls out, for lack of a better term. Mentality of just like, you've got the shot, even if you're just barely open, like jack it up, because that's who we are. And this is as open as you're going to get against this Heat defense. Al was jacking them up early. He was hitting them. And that, again, permeated through the rest of the team. Al Horford was a plus 23, a team high plus 23 in this game, despite some early foul trouble there. So good to see 36-year-old Papa Al back doing what he does.
Yeah, Papa Al was out tonight, playoff Al. And you're right. Like he was 3 for 6 from 3 in the game and 3 for 5 for 3 in the first half. Like he was coming out, and yeah, look, Al believes that he's an elite shooter. Absolutely. That's what he believes. And he came out today and was like, I'm making these shots. I'm taking them any daylight. I'm shooting. And like, honestly, he kept the Celtics in the game. Like those were tough shots. Those were, I thought, to go back to the earned 3 things, I thought a couple of those were not, that earned. They were like quick passes, bang, I'm firing. And we needed them. Like this, it cannot be overstated how important Al Horford knocking down threes are for this offense. Like it's been everything ever since he's been in Boston. Even before he went to Philly, like that pick and pop with Isaiah Thomas was like elite. He shoots a lot more of them now than he did back then, but like that's always been, when he's been in Boston, been a massive, massive reason of why the Celtics offense has been successful. Please, basketball gods, make this the beginning of something new. Please, please.
I hope they have an ice bath on the team plane, because there's a few guys actually that need to just be placed inside of that plane ice bath on the flight back to Boston. Al at the top of that list. And the timing of Al's threes, like most of them came early in the game. We talked about the Heat role players being like 1 for something, 2 for something. They're like BS shots that they were hitting that we've seen all series. Al was like getting his shots in, his 3-point shots made at that time. So like absolutely keeping us afloat. And yeah, we saw the other guys sort of pick it up later in the game. Talked about Derek White, Marcus Smart, 3 of 9 from 3, but all extremely timely threes. No less than in the third quarter when the Heat were making their run, and it was like, oh no, like the Heat are punching back again. We've barely been able to withstand one run in this series. Like now they're coming back for the third time. Like this has got to be it. And Smart hit like a pretty contested corner 3 off, I believe, a Tatum pass to put it back up, I don't know, 6, 7, 8. And just to sort of like re-inspire confidence in certainly me watching from home, freaking the F out, but I'm sure the Celtics are on the court as well. So that was really good. His 6 assists were crucial. And we've talked about this all year on the podcast, the First of the Floor podcast. Like, subscribe, share. That the person who's best at finding Jason Tatum at the nail against zone defenses is Marcus Smart. We talk about Tatum being an excellent play initiator. Technically, I guess Tatum is initiating the play by getting himself to that catch point on the nail against the zone, but it takes a certain talent, given all the turnovers we've seen this year, to get Tatum the ball in those positions. And Marcus Smart is like the GOAT at getting Tatum the ball in those positions on this team. So I was really impressed with what I saw from Smart in this one.
Yeah, Smart, look, he's just never going to be scared. And in the first half, he is 0 for 4, all 3-point attempts. And in the second half, he goes 4 for 7, 3 for 5 from 3, 4 assists, 0 turnovers, 1 steal. He's not the perfect player. Yeah, look, Jack in the chat, if Marcus Smart wants to, date any of my family members, please go ahead.
It's encouraged.
Could only be an upgrade. He is an absolute clutch, fearless player. He's never going to be scared in those moments. And I feel like the rest of the team trusts him. I hesitate to use the love and trust moniker right now, but Tatum feels very comfortable kicking to Marcus, and like in that second half, you're always when he's shooting catch and shoot threes, you just feel so much more confident than when he's like taking it. And they're far fewer these days, like those early shot clock pull up threes. But when Tatum's finding him out of a double team on a wide open catch and shoot 3, like he has to take those. And he has to be out there because of what he gives you from a playmaking perspective, because of what the Heat's doing with the zone. With how Brogdon's playing, like Marcus is going to have to play a lot. And tonight, right, he played 35 minutes, like significantly more than either of the other 2 guards. Yeah, Brogdon only 16 minutes. Yeah, credit Joe again, right? Like he was like, Marcus has it. And it wasn't even because he was making shots, but Brogdon's getting cooked on the other end. I know I trust Marcus down the stretch. So it's like,
yeah, so much just the absence of Brogdon having it or anything in this game. But yeah, like you said, so good for Joe to like not rest on his laurels and just be like, okay, like this is what it is. And the closing lineup in this game was not one that we were super familiar with. I thought I had it here somewhere. But yeah, White, Jalen, Tatum, Grant, and Horford. With like 7 minutes to go. Yeah, and like we saw some variations as we got closer to the final whistle there, but that was like what Joe leaned on towards the end of the game, and it was just so good to see him finally be like, this is what's working best in this game. That's what I'm going with, because he had just not done that at all, like throughout this series or throughout the entire year, to be honest. Jaylen Brown, we have to talk about. Another not great game.
Whoa.
He said after the game, quote, I still think we can play a lot better. I think a lot of that must be directed at himself, or like we can play better because I can be better for this team. We survived this game despite him shooting 1 of 5 from 3. I mentioned his impact in transition later in the game, like his teammates and the team defense actually opened up ways for Jalen to like be his best, which is under duress, like technically contested layups, but like in transition with a head of steam, he was actually really effective. But he's probably going to need to find ways to assert himself other than like catching and laying the ball up in transition for the Celtics to actually have any hope of turning this around. Do you think that's possible for Jalen for the remainder of this series?
Man, that first half was tough for Malcolm and for Jalen. They've got to do a better job of getting him in spots where he can succeed, and they did it late as well, where they had that lead and they're going to Jalen like late in the game instead of to Tatum to initiate. And I'm like, guys, I get it. We love Jalen, but this is not the time to work on Jalen's initiating and playmaking. That time has gone. That time was the regular season. We're playing Charlotte. We're playing San Antonio. You can have as many. We're playing Houston. You can have as many initiating reps as you want. Tatum has to be the guy with the ball. And I think Jalen just needs to play in the flow of the offense. I think let Tatum create the advantages. And Jalen, I think at this point, just has to be one of the others. Like today, he had what it was like. He didn't actually shoot that much, right? Like he was 7 for 16. I cannot believe he has 1 turnover. That is one of those things you see on the box score. It's like that doesn't match what my eyes saw.
Yeah, doesn't compute.
Right?
He had 5 fouls though.
5 fouls, yeah. That honestly was actually kind of good. When I know he went out with 4 fouls at one point, that felt like a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he takes 16 shots. That's definitely down from his usual, amount that he takes, I think. Marcus takes 11, D White with 10. I think having Jalen just be a cog versus like one of the conductors of the train in this specific matchup is probably the move. Like having Tatum and Smart be the guys that are creating plays, and then when it's kicked out to Jalen, just make the right play, but just attack off a manipulated defense, attack off a bended defense, because that's where I think he can actually find success. Because when he's trying to attack off a set defense, when Miami's set and Jaylen Brown's coming, I feel like you can see the Miami Heat defense just like salivating, being 100% chance we're getting a deflection and a turnover here. Like you want Jalen coming off pin downs, 2 dribbles. That's the maximum that Jalen's allowed to have, and then he has to pass the ball when he's playing the Miami Heat, because any more than that, it gets out of control. So I think just like having him be part of the system, as opposed to like, hey, Jalen, go like initiate for us in this matchup, is not how we're going to turn. Like we're not going to find Jalen by setting him up to fail in that regard.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, having him be part of the system. I also think like as far as like reviewing film after the game, it's like there's 2 groups. Everyone, that was great. Keep doing what you're doing. Don't change that at all. That's amazing. There's nothing the Heat can do to adjust to that. Jalen, can you hang back for a bit? We're going to need to talk to you after the film session. Like, here's how you can be more impactful. Like, maybe there's some hope, and I'm probably grasping at straws here, but like, because he's such a standout, I guess, detractor from this performance, maybe he can be a focus of a post-game and then pre-game discussion heading into game 5 of like, okay, like this was almost perfect team-wise. Jalen, like here are the seams you can sort of find for yourself. But I think if we've learned anything about Jalen in his career so far, it's like so much of it is in his head, and he just needs to like play without thinking, which is why in transition, if he's like catching, on the drive and there's just no time to stop and think, like that's where he's clearly at his best. So I don't know if that's something that we can do away with between now and game 5. We talked about Brogdon. Rob Williams was just solid in this game. It wasn't like a standout Rob game. I think where he really stood out was actually defending in isolation, because we switch those pick and roll coverages when Rob is helping to guard the pick and roll as the big, and he was just like for the most part quite solid in managing those switches. And He had one notable block on Jimmy Butler in this game, but for the most part, it was the contests and the misses at the rim that he forced that I thought was really impactful. And like really role wise, if Al's hitting his threes and like being the Al that we've known and loved in recent years, Rob can get away with. He just needs to be the better backup big in this series. And when his competition there is Cody Zeller and Rob's so good defensively, like he can achieve that with ease, I thought. And he stayed in that lane in this game. I thought that was really helpful and all we needed from him.
It feels like he's getting more comfortable with the matchup. Jimmy Butler's pump fake is so elite, man. It's like he always kind of had it, but he got to the Heat, and D Wade has to be the guy that comes to mind when you think about like a wing scoring guard that's like makes his money living, in the mid-range and restricted area. Like Jimmy, obviously different players, but D Wade's pump fake, DeMar DeRozan, these guys are so good at getting guys up, and Rob wants to block your shot so badly. And the first game or two, he could not help himself. But it felt like today, he did a much better job of staying down. And like, that's all we need from Rob. Like, if Judy's going to ISO him, take the hit, make sure you get your body in good position, take those hits and stay connected enough. Because once Rob gets that hand up, like his arms are so long that he can still contest these shots without jumping on Jimmy. Like, if you are going to jump, just jump up. Don't jump out. It feels like he looked a lot more comfortable guarding Jimmy today, and I would like to see them go to some of that more switching stuff, because I felt like today, I don't know, they were trying to like Grant and Rob did, like Grant was going over the screen. Like, we don't need Grant doing screen navigation. Like, just switch it. I don't care who's running the pick and roll. There's no way the better option is having Grant go over any screens. So it's just like, whoever's going over this, whoever's setting the screen, just switch it. Let Rob cover whoever it is in the switch. Let Grant cover whoever it is in the switch. Feel comfortable with both of those guys doing that, especially Rob as he gets more comfortable.
Well, yeah. And on that switch, like every time we saw Rob guarding like an ISO Butler instead of Derek White, who was getting targeted super early, that was just such a win. Like regardless of the outcome, to just see Rob on that island instead of Derek is just such a win before the play even unfolds. I think we should move on. We've covered, we've done the offense, we've done the defense from both sides. We've run through like all the individuals, which is like the benefit of late night is like we could just kind of take our time.
Yeah.
We do spin this into a podcast. This is going to be up on our audio feed, the First to the Floor audio podcast feed later. But like we're not really adhering to that, like, let's keep it under 45 minutes kind of podcast restriction here. So we're going long. Before we move on to like miscellaneous points and some other off-topic stuff, Jake, have you got any sort of final thoughts on the game other than it's just freaking awesome that we're still alive?
Bottle it up. Maybe we should just can we play Game 5 in Miami?
In Miami,
yeah. These rims. Can we bring these rims to Boston? Something.
Yeah, and just if you're heading to the game, obviously we won't be there because we're in the other hemisphere. Just like you got to bring that noise, because I think the last time we saw that level of intensity from the crowd was Game 7, and we know what we got there against the Sixers there. So
I think the crowd's going to be good to go because it feels like freedom now.
It does.
Like, everybody's like, whatever, dude.
We've avoided devastation.
Yeah,
right.
Just let it fly. Scream, get drunk beforehand if you're going to the game. Let it all hang out. It's gonna be good.
Now, miscellaneous points. Dave Portnoy of Barstool Sports. He apparently arranged a team dinner for the Celtics last night. Per Brian Robb. So Brian Robb said in a tweet that Jaylen Brown said the team was all together as a team last night before Game 4, but didn't want to give any more details. Barstool Greeny, friend of the show, he's been on a few pods these playoffs with us on First to the Floor, retweeted something from Dave Portnoy being like he basically arranged a team dinner for the guys. That's a miscellaneous point, Jake. I don't really have any questions out of that unless you have any thoughts. Chris Forsberg, also friend of the show, added that the Celtics had a team outing at Top Golf after their afternoon film session, so maybe whacking golf balls help to relieve all their stress. And then as well, and this is the craziest missed point, I think, the Yankees that were reverse swept by the Red Sox in 2004. For some reason, some game ops person, some Heat staffer arranged for A-Rod and Derek Jeter to both be in the house, which if you are familiar with sports fandom and the cosmic influences that sort of come into that and the outcomes of these games, you would not do that in 1,000 years. Yeah, I've said everything.
This is the thing about Miami, is they're not locked in. They're not. Then like their fans turn up late. I think it was game 3, game 4. I don't even know. They're all blurring together now. But like you're seeing like empty seats scattered through the crowd. Do you think the ops person knows anything about A-Rod and Derek Jeter? They probably thought they were tech people. The ops person was like, "Oh yeah, Derek Jeter sounds like a guy that owns an airplane company. A-Rod, just an aluminium company probably." If this was happening in New York, I know they're Yankees legends, but I think Knicks ops people would be smart enough to know you cannot allow A-Rod and Derek Jeter into the building up 3-1. Because today, that Max Strus 3 off of that bullcrap play and the Celtics rally 18-0 was like when the Celtics came back and got one game down 3-0 against the Yankees. You cannot allow Jeter and A-Rod to be in the building for something like that. It's just cannot.
Like, give them an all expenses paid trip to anywhere. Like, leave
literally
the country.
Moon.
Like,
literally
just
the moon.
leave the time zone. Yeah, like leave the planet. Don't come near here. If you're the Heat ops person, like what would you do just on that? Like to
Well, I think they should be fired now, personally.
Yeah, but just also but pay however many empty seats there were, pay 10,000 of the loudest people in Miami to like fill those seats and scream for the Heat, because at least that feels more authentic than and you could tell early in the game they're piping in so much noise into the arena. Like that's the game ops move for the Heat.
Yeah, my dad went to a game in Miami earlier in the year when the Celtics played the Heat, and when you and me have been to a game at TD Garden, and like you can get there early, but like it's busy, it's full. To get like near the court during warm-ups is hard because so many people are already getting down there. In Miami, Dad just walks straight to the front row and sends me some videos of Horford getting shots up, and shout out Jake's dad, 100%, getting boots on the ground for us. But like, it's what also frustrates me about the whole Miami Heat experience. Is just like they don't have the passion, they don't have the fans. Like the fact that they've been like really competitive and good is frustrating, especially at the hands of a real fan base like the Celtics.
What's your confidence level heading into Game 5, Jake? I know we've kind of already touched on it. And like the fact that we are the betting favorites. If anyone who has followed the betting odds this series, like you should know that we are by default, therefore, not the actual favorites in this game. How do you feel about that, Jake?
Oh man, whatever the dudes have done and in Vegas have done with their model, like the Celtics are the better team, and so it feels like the Celtics are getting a boost at home, and now we're 9-11 in our last 20-ish playoff games. Yeah, I can't do maths. 9 + 11 is hard. 9-11 our last how many playoff games? That's not good. And 21. Again, we win another game on the road in a do or die situation.
20. Sorry.
9 + 11, 20. Nailed it. Thanks, Ben. Always got my back.
I was wrong initially.
No, that's good, right? So maybe this is the time. Maybe this is now when everybody expects us to lose a home game because we've lost all of the important home games, minus Game 7 against Philly and Game 7 against Milwaukee last year. This is the time. Do or die in the Garden. The people are going to be ready to go.
Maybe.
I feel confident in this moment because I just watched the Celtics win and it was awesome. But 7 seconds before tip-off, I'm going to be wanting to vomit everywhere.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, confidence is not like an applicable word for me. Like I'm not confident that they'll win. I'm not confident that they'll lose. This isn't like the deep analysis of the Garden Report or the Winning Plays podcast or other amazing podcasts that you'll hear on the CLNS network. This is me just saying, if there's one thing we know about the Celtics this year, it's that we should have, like, gathering all the data and making a decision based on that, is that we should have absolutely no idea and therefore no confidence as to how they perform in this next game. And that applies to the game that we just watched, like a blowout to prevent a sweep. Like, okay, I did not have that on my bingo card, and therefore, like, I'm confident in saying that I have no idea what's going to happen in the next game. I think that's really the only authentic response as to what's going to happen next. I think that's just fair enough.
It's on brand for you, Ben, I think.
I have
you
no
just
idea.
have no idea. Please win. Please win.
5 years of the podcast, and that's been the approach all along. Let's move on here. This is sort of our final thing to touch on before we wrap up, and we sort of move away from like specifically talking about the game. So Kevin O'Connor had a report. I think it was quoted on a podcast. So the quote is, "I had a source tell me in the past week that this Celtics team feels like a group that's tired of fake liking each other." First of all, Jake, just your reaction to that quote, especially given the context of what we just saw and the guys actually playing with, a lot of cohesion. What do you think about that report?
This is just what happens when bad things happen. Like when the first half of last season, where the Celtics were struggling, they were below 500. It was break up the Jays. Marcus Smart called him out in the media. Everybody's like, trade, whatever. They turn it around, and everybody's like, see, they fixed everything, etc. How many times have we gone through versions of this report? It's just like, how many times? This fake liking stuff, I mean, personally, the way I read it is that this is directed at Jalen, because obviously, you zoom out and it's all about the Jalen Supermax, and if they don't offer that to him, do they trade him? Like, that feels like if you're talking about players that like each other, it doesn't really matter if no one likes each other besides like Jalen liking the team or Jason liking the team. Like, not really. So I feel like this was directed at Jalen specifically. And my thing, right, like, we've had this report on like way too many times. If life's so tough, if Jalen's having such a bad time, he hates his coworkers this much, or if it's, someone else on the team, why has no one on this team asked for a trade? Not in the last 5 years. There hasn't been a single leak about like Jaylen Brown wants a trade. Marcus Smart wants a trade. When those rumors about Kevin Durant came out and Jalen potentially being traded for them, he could have easily been like, I've had enough. Enough of the trade rumors. Just trade me to Brooklyn. Didn't happen.
And if there was any sense of that internally, like, that would have been the time to trade him for freaking Kevin Durant. And that wasn't done, because clearly there's wins to be had. There's championships to be won with the Jays intact. And also Malcolm Brogdon, Blake Griffin, two newcomers with sort of the added context of how other locker rooms compared to this year's locker room have both said multiple times this year, like, how much of a one-of-a-kind unity and cohesion there is among the guys in this locker room. So to go from that, like, multiple instances of that level of praise, to like suddenly these guys are pretending to like each other, and then you look at the phrasing of Kevin O'Connor's quote-unquote report, it's like, my source reports an opinion on this. It's my source's perception of some vague details that I'm getting. It's not like, here's what we saw, here's what we know. It's basically like, here's what a guy I know thinks based on like what little information he has. So I get it. Like, Kevin O'Connor, he's a career reporter. Like, a tweet like that gets that kind of engagement is like food on the table for him. I get that, but I don't know. It's frustrating because anyone who knows anything about the team is like so quickly able to denote any substance there.
Well, it's just like the timing of it, right? Like, okay, why does this come out right now when the Celtics are down 3-0? It's like we have a million beat writers. We have people covering the team all year long, and now we hear it. It's like the Malcolm Brogdon and Blake Griffin thing is a perfect example. It's like they don't have to say, this is one of the best locker rooms I've ever been in. They can be like, I'm happy to be here. Like, we're going to work hard, going to try and win a championship. Like, he does not, they don't have to go out of their way to say, literally, like, this is special. I've never experienced this before. You cannot take this stuff for granted. Like, sure. Are they lying straight to our faces? Sure, maybe. But, like, you kind of have to take them for their, I'm way more likely to take these guys at their word than I am to take Kevin O'Connor saying, our source feels like. None of that's reporting. Like, we have game 6, pure emotion, end of the game in Philadelphia. Jason Tatum just saves the season. And we got these two guys, like, they got their, like, what were these? They're just doing this for the camera? Like, yo, look at the way that Jaylen Brown hugs Jason Tatum after this. It's like, I don't hug some of the people I love more than anything else in the world. Look at this sweet caress. He comes, he's like, grabs his hips.
Like that.
Look at this caress. Beautiful. Grabs the hip, holds him tight.
In the city of brotherly love as well.
In the city. Like, whatever. I'm just so over it, dude. Like, if he didn't like anyone here, he would have just left like 2 years ago. How many stars are like not even that unhappy and just ask out?
Yeah.
So many. Every year there's like multiple. And like, if it was so bad, he would just leave. So it's like, whatever.
KOC source is Bill Simmons.
What is Bill Simmons doing, dude? He apparently wants us to win the title, and he's got bloody Logan Murdoch releasing these reports. Kevin O'Connor's going on TV talking nonsense.
There's a desperation. There's a desperation to be seen as neutral. And anyone who has a known history of skewing Celtics, and unfortunately, like Bill Simmons has kind of sold himself out in this sense, and like he has like skewed back neutral, or at least he tries to, and he's gone, like the pendulum has swung too far in the other direction. I think that's pretty clear with Kevin O'Connor as well. Like I feel pretty confident in saying that, and I'm saying that as someone who is kind of desperate to get KOC on the show at some point to talk to Celtics, although he seems inaccessible. But we'll continue to try. So all of that is to segue into what we'll finish up on here, Jake, and that is, what are your all-time Celtics, but also like we'll zoom out to the NBA angle on this as well, your all-time quote fly on the wall moments? And if that's not clear, like what moments in NBA history that typically happen behind the scenes do you wish that you were present for as a fly on the wall? I'll let you start.
I would love to have been in the locker room for the entire Brooklyn Nets series last year, and not in the Celtics locker room, in the Brooklyn Nets locker room. Like, as an Australian, I'm like so intrigued by the whole Ben Simmons existence, and to have him like leaking reports every day about his health status in a series where they like really needed him. I would have just like, where he wore that like clown, it was literally a clown suit. And there's a shot of like Rob dunking on the Brooklyn Nets, and in the corner is Ben Simmons just standing there, literally looking like a clown. I should have uploaded it to the stream.
It's the orange pants.
Yeah, orange pants, the purple stuff with the John Lennon glasses.
Un-Australian.
I mean, yeah. Look, the Australian part getting tough, and I would love to just see him in the locker room and people interacting with him, where he's like, they go down 0-3 and the reports are like, he might be back. He was supposed to be back for game 3, doesn't play. And then like literally in the wake of it, the hours after, it's like the Brooklyn Nets are expecting Ben Simmons to play in game 4. He, in fact, did not play in game 4, and they lost and were swept. So just to be around the Brooklyn Nets, because I think that's got to be the weirdest of the Ben Simmons interactions, because I think Kyrie and KD you know about guys from around the league, but until you actually work with someone and around someone every day, like you can't appreciate like how weird or how bad something is.
Mm-hmm.
I would have just loved to see them dap him up in the locker room afterwards. Would have been gold.
He's like hiding his phone screen so they can't see him, like texting, like direct things to Woj and Shams. Yeah, that's a good one. And folks, let us know in the chat, like what are your all-time NBA or Celtic fly on the wall moments? I'll go with the Ainge Fultz, like where were they? What happened? What was the conversation when Ainge was like, you know what? I'm not going to draft Markel Fultz. I'm actually going to trade that pick and devise this genius plan to get the best prospect in the draft while also getting a first-round pick that I believe became Romeo Langford.
Yeah,
bummer. But still, that's draft capital. Like, what was that conversation? And what was the moment where Ainge was like, geez, like, I can't draft this guy.
Yeah, what was it?
Like, what did he see that no one else saw? I'd love to be a fly on the wall in that moment.
Yeah, because I know Markel Fultz like a big Chick-fil-A guy, and that would have been not a red flag for me, considering how much I love Chick-fil-A. But maybe it was something like that. Maybe he saw the shot being broken. Like that's got to be one.
Maybe he broke it.
Yeah.
Maybe he put him through some sort of verbal diatribe of like, you ain't shit. Like, like to see if he puts it through every draft prospect to see if he can break them down. And Fultz was like the first guy who broke down.
Speaking of Danny Ainge, I feel like you could just, how many Danny Ainge trades are there? And just to be around where he like figures it out, like the KG to the Nets trade. Maybe the one where he's probably the most ecstatic was his most recent trade. Like the Rudy Gobert trade, I would love to have been next to Ainge when he just got Vanderbilt. But he's just like, just lights up a cigar, whiskey. He's like, I just may have made the best trade in the history of the NBA. 5 first-round picks for Rudy Gobert.
Just unzips his pants, just relaxes.
It's like, time for a fast PP.
I also had Kyrie Irving after saying he'd resign, and this isn't like this is a fly who like lives in the locker room all year, right?
Of course.
Who witnesses like just the degradation of that relationship, including what does government mean to you, everything that happened leading up to that, and since then, like I want to know. Like, I want to know all about what happened there, going from if you guys will have me, I'll resign, to like ask me in July, to the franchise like will boo him forever. Celtics fans will boo him forever. Fill in the dots. Like connect the dots. I want to know.
The like remember the infamous plane ride like from like from east to the west coast, and they had like this. Kyrie got up in front of everybody and gave that speech, and they won like 2 games in a row.
Golden State,
like, the magical plane ride.
Yeah.
And then it collapsed again. Like I would have loved to see the team being like, yeah, cool, bro.
Cool. Yeah. What are the like airplane bathroom one-on-one convos happening? Like, oh, can you believe this fucking guy? Like Kyrie, here he is again. Like
just any time he gave a press conference, I would love to have just been next to Jaylen Brown and been like, hey, did you hear Kyrie just said this thing about the young guys again?
So good.
And Jaylen's just like, serenity now. And now they're best buds, so who knew?
Yeah. Not so interested to be a fly on the wall for that. I don't care as much. Colin in the chat called out when Jordan Crawford was player of the month. That's a all-time response.
I was like, you're speaking Ben's language.
Yeah. That's my jam. The IT trade, I think, is another one.
Tough.
Just like that's a tough call. Danny Ainge is like one of maybe 3 people ever in modern history who could make that call. I don't think Brad Stevens could make that trade. I think he cares too much about like the people side of things. That's a huge fly on the wall situation. And I'll also say just like Grant Williams, like his relationship with other players on the team. Like I think we all get the sense that like they all give him a lot of grief, and he's kind of like the butt of all the jokes just throughout the course of his time on the team. Fly on the wall, experiencing all of the Grant hate. You know, there's love in that hate, but it's definitely being dished towards Grant at all times. I think that'd be another good thing to witness.
Yeah, to be in the locker room after the Cleveland game where he has the "I'ma make them both" stuff.
Yeah.
Like to be in the locker room for that. But to balance it out, I would also like to be in the locker room after Game 7 against Milwaukee and see how everybody like. He's like, yeah, cool, Grant. You made some shots for once. That's what you're supposed to do. Yeah.
Yeah, there's footage of that, of him like being like, yeah, like coming back after he did like press immediately after the game, and you can see everyone's like, all right, like go have a shower, settle down.
That's why like Tatum in the post-game press conference of Game 7 was like, oh man, like now we're gonna have to hear about this for the next forever.
You're only that open because of how awesome the rest of us are. What else? Have you got any other Celtics fly on the wall moments, Jake, before we pretty much wrap up?
Not off the top of my head, but like this is a much sadder one. Just like being around the IT Celtics team, where his sister died, and they like rallied, and because that was still probably the most emotional like experience as a Celtics fan.
Yeah,
like to being around like the brotherly love that team like clearly showed each other. I think would have just been like cool to see. And then following on from that, being in the locker room after the Kelly Olynyk game, Game 7 against the Wizards.
Ooh, yeah. Big time.
Yeah. These are just all just like great Celtics moments from the last 5 years.
Yeah. As far as NBA moments, and we'll just quickly touch on this because we're like hour and a half here now. MJ's first retirement. That's like it's like a top 3 NBA conspiracy. What happened? Was he in trouble? Was there a sort of a gambling debt or a gambling situation there that the league had to distance themselves from him? He had to distance himself from the league. I think that's like to be in the room there with David Stern and Michael Jordan. That's my number one. I wish I was there. NBA moment.
Like we're never gonna know, man. But he was not very good at baseball, so you wonder, was that a forced attempt at baseball, or did he really like baseball that much? It's hard to say. Like he clearly didn't have a no sweat first bet if it was gambling. Like that maybe could have kept him out of trouble there. He could have won it back. That's definitely the one. Or do you want to be in the locker room where Michael announces that he's coming back, and then being in like the Rockets locker room, like being around the room when you hear, oh man, like there's not really that player in the NBA right now like MJ. Like now that LeBron's kind of slowed down, like if LeBron had retired, I don't know, like after they won the 2016 finals, just as like the Celtics were kind of like on the rise, and the season before, like the season we signed Kyrie, trade for Kyrie, we hear that LeBron's coming back to the Cavs with Kyrie and stuff. We're like, damn it. We're going to go to the finals. That'd have been awesome. So I would imagine like being around the league and hearing that MJ was coming back would have been hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, if you have any other NBA or Celtics fly on the wall moments, let us know. There's definitely more. I mean, the NBA has been pretty well rife with conspiracies, legitimate or fan-made or otherwise, since the league's inception there. So there's a lot of good stuff to get to there, and maybe we can circle back on some of this on the next late night show. I think that's going to do it for this one. Jake, have you got anything else on the game or anything we've touched on so far that you want to wrap with?
No, Upshot 99's got it. Next 2 out of 3 are in Boston.
Yes.
Legacy's on the line. Let's show the league what we got, dude. Game 5. See you guys after the show, after the game.
Yeah. All right, that's going to do it for this one. Celtics in 7. See ya.